Hello everyone, and welcome to Crystal's Crochet Cubbyhole and Tutorial Tuesday. Today we are going to make a washcloth using a stitch out of my new book that I got for my birthday. Let me show you. The New Crochet Stitch Dictionary, and it's by Neil Brass and Evelyn Hetty Burkhardt. I'm sorry, I'm not good at pronouncing names. But it's one of the stitches in this book that we'll be using, and it's called the Curly Stripes Stitch. You will need a pair of scissors, a needle for sewing in the ends, a tape measure to measure the width and length of your washcloth, and a crochet hook. I'm using a 6mm, and this is one of the hooks that came out of that set that I got from One Day Saving. So we're going to try it out and see how it does. And then the yarn we're using is Sugars and Cream. It's 100% cotton in the color red. So this is a 4-weight. I don't see where it says, but I'm thinking it's a 4-weight. Anyway, that's the yarn we're going to be using. So let me bring my camera in a little bit closer and let's get started. And then of course we will be starting this with a slip knot. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe I should work on the lighting just a little bit more. Hold on just a second. I just want to make sure you can see that. Sorry for the camera shaking. Okay. I'll try not to be in shadow. So we're going to start with a slip knot. And when you're doing this stitch, you need an odd number of chains to start with. Plus you'll chain one for a beginning chain for the next row. So I'm going to chain, usually I chain about 30 for my washcloths. So I'm going to chain 29. So this one might be a little bit smaller than some of the others. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 28, 29. So chain of 29 plus 1 for the beginning of the next row. So chain 1 for the beginning of the next row. So there's our chain. Let's see how much that measures. So it's right at 9 inches. Let's see. Why don't we go a little bit longer? If that's 30, 31, and then chain 1, because it's got to be an odd number. So 31, chain 1 more. Let's see, get that untwisted. And now that's right at 10. So it'll be just a little under 10, hopefully, not too much, when we come back to that, where we're going back. So the next row, you've got a chain. I chained 31 plus 1 more, so a total of 32 chains on this first row, because you want an odd number plus 1 for the where you're going to turn and do your row. So now all we're going to do is going into the second chain from the hook. We're going to do a single crochet. Let's see if I can maybe get it closer. Maybe that'll help. I just got to make sure I stay in camera. So in the second chain from the hook, we're going to go through and do a single crochet. And we're going to do a single crochet in every stitch across. So I'll meet you near the end, and we'll go from there. Okay, we're coming up toward the end of my chain. So I'm continuing to do a single crochet in every stitch across. Hold on just a second. Okay, sorry about that. So I've got 2 more chains. So single crochet in the last 2. Okay, go all the way to the end. Single crochet. Then we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. And this is what we've got so far. Okay, so there's our, and we chained 1 and turned. So now this is going to be what we're going to start repeating every row. We're going to do, and it's all single crochets, but we're going to do single crochets in the back loop only and in the front loop only. So here's the first one, our first stitch, and you have to turn your work so you can see your stitches right there. Let me see. Let me go close for just a minute. Okay. So here's our stitches. So we're going to go in the first stitch here. We're going back loop only. Wrap your yarn, pull up, 2 loops on your hook, wrap your yarn, pull through for a single crochet, back loop only. Now the next stitch, the next stitch is front loop only. So we're going in through the front loop only of that stitch, wrap your yarn, and do a single crochet. Then the next stitch, and see you're going to have to turn it a little bit because they're kind of laying on their side. This next stitch, we're going to do back loop, single crochet. The next stitch, front loop, single crochet. So you're only going into either the back loop or the front loop of each of the stitches across. That was the front loop, so the next one will be the back loop. So you're alternating. Back loop, and you started out with a back loop in this row. Front loop. And you know, keep looking and make sure you're getting to the right stitch. Next is a back loop. Front loop. Back loop. Front loop. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me pull this back so that you see, because I got such a small space to work in. When I pull it up close like that, I keep going off camera. Sorry. Allergies are bothering me. So, okay. So I just did a front loop, so this next one will be a back loop. I'm trying to adjust that lighting. Then a front loop, and we're just going to do that all the way across. Back loop, single crochet, front loop, single crochet, back loop, and so you kind of turn your work around there so you can see the loops. Back loop, and then front loop. And you'll do that all the way across, and I'll meet you near the end. I just did a back loop, so now I'm going to do a front loop. And I'm ending with a back loop. A little bit hard to get a hold of right here. It'll probably be easier as you go along and get more rows. So we started with a back loop, and we ended with a back loop single crochet. So now we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. And here's what we got going on so far. And this is called curly stripes. So now this next row, we're going to do back loop, single crochet. Get that out of the way. Then front loop, single crochet. And see, let me back up here. Make sure that you're not going back into this one here that you just did. It is really, you know, right there is the one I just did. You want to, if you have to, you can go like this, so you can see, make sure you're getting the next stitch and not going back into that same stitch. So we're going to do a front loop, single crochet, and again you have to kind of turn your work and look at it. Back loop, single crochet, front loop, single crochet. Now you're going to keep doing that. I'll meet you back at the end of this row and we'll start one more row again together, and then I think you'll be able to do it and I'll come back near the end. But let me pause and I'll meet you back at the end of the row. Okay, I just did a front loop. Yes, and so now I'm see, I had to look and pay attention. The front loop's gone. So, and always make sure you're getting only that front or back loop, and you're alternating back, starting with back loop, front loop, front loop, all the way to the end. So we just did a front loop, so we're going to do a back loop, single crochet, front loop, single crochet, back loop, single crochet, front loop, single crochet, and we're ending again with a back loop, single crochet. And that one's kind of hard to find. You just got to try to make sure you're getting the back loop of that last stitch. Single crochet, chain one, and turn. Now let's see what we got going on so far. There's our pattern that we got going on. I'm going to measure that. I'm wondering how short it is. See, we're down to about 9 inches. So that'll be okay. It's just a smaller washcloth. Again, if you're doing these as sets, as gifts, you want them all to be the same size. So if you're doing different stitch washcloths, but you're wanting to put them together, just make sure that they're the same size so it'll look right when you get a little gift set together. Wrap it with a ribbon and it'll be cute and good to go. So we chain one and turn. So now we're going to do our next row, back loop, single crochet. And I'm hoping there's not a shadow on this. It's hard for me to tell from the angle I'm looking at the camera and everything. But I hope you can see okay. Let me see. Hold on just a minute. Okay, I don't know if that'll give more light or not. Looks like it might be just too much. I mean... sorry, didn't mean to bump that. Yeah, that's not going to work. Okay. I'm getting my neck light out to see if that worked for you. But, okay, so we did our back loop. Now we're going to do a front loop, single crochet. Back loop. And so you're turning, you're working, looking for that stitch. Front loop. Back loop. Front loop. Let me go closer. I'll try to do better, guys, and stay in the camera. So we just did a front loop, so this one will be a back loop. Front loop. Back loop. Front loop. And this crochet hook is doing really nicely. Back loop, and I talk to myself when I'm doing this to make sure I'm on the right stitch. Front loop. Back loop. Front loop. It feels the hook feels very nice in your hand. That was front loop, so this one's back loop. Front loop. Back loop, front loop. Oops. See, there I almost got both loops, and you only want the front loop or the back loop, whichever one you're on. Back loop, front loop, back loop, front loop. Give me some more yarn. Okay, that was the front loop, so this one's the back loop. Front loop. Back loop. Front loop. back loop, front loop, back loop. Now front loop. Now that one didn't end right. Okay, hold on. Hold on just a minute. Okay guys, I frogged that row out. You're just going to have to make sure, because it got me off, because I did it in the wrong stitch to start with. So you always try to make sure you're in that correct stitch. So, because there's your chain 1. So this stitch right here is where we go in for the back loop. So I'm going to do that, and I'll meet you at the end. I'll redo this row. Okay, I'm on the last stitch, and I just did a front loop, so I'm ending with a back loop, so I know I'm correct in my stitch count. And then I'm going to chain 1 and turn. And believe it or not, guys, this is the first time I've done this stitch. I am learning it with you. So there's what our work looks like so far. That's kind of a pretty stitch, and it's got some, enough ridges and texture that it'll make a nice washcloth. So you got to just make sure that you're starting in the correct stitch on each side, and you're going to do back loop, front loop, single crochets all the way across. Start with a back loop and you end with a back loop. So now I've got to make sure that I go into this stitch and I don't miss it. If I jump over here, I've lost a stitch. Let me get up here. So I'm going to back loop, single crochet in this first stitch right here. And that should keep your sides pretty squared up too. Then front loop. And I'm going to keep doing this until I get enough rows to make the size of the washcloth I'm making. And mine's about 9 inches, so I want to go 9 inches, so I'll do a square. So I will meet you back when I'm getting ready to do the last row, and we'll do it together. So just keep working. If you have to rewind or fast forward or anything like that on the videos, please do so. So I'm going to continue with my rows until I get to the size I want, and I'll meet back with you. Okay guys, I finished my washcloth, and it's got a pretty nice even edge, but if you wanted to, you could always add you a border of single crochets all the way around. I was going to finish the last row with you, but when I got to measuring, it shrunk. It ended up being about 8 by 8. Somewhere there. Yeah. So, there's the washcloth. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And we'll see what other stitch we can find for next week out of the book. How's that sound? I appreciate you guys. I love you. And we'll talk to you later in Crystal's Crochet Cubbyhole. Bye for now.